This is my author study on Charles Alexander Eastman. Some of Eastman's works include Indian Boyhood, Civilizations as Preached and Practiced, The Souls of the White Man, From the Deep Woods to Civilization, On Wolf Mountain, and The Founder of 10 Towns. This is a little background on context on my that I found um in my first source. So in the late 15th, 16th centuries, when the white men came to America, they met the indigenous people that land, the Native Americans. Um, when they went there, they saw the Native Americans as inferior. So they gave them the right to take their land. They took their land and their natural resources. Um, but they couldn't fully capitalize on their land with the Native Americans there. So this called for a full-scale removal of the Indians through assimilation. But it was more than just assimilation. It was straight up oppression and discrimination towards the Americans or towards the Native Americans. But this was reframed as bringing civilization. They saw this as bringing civilization to the New World. In Charles Alexander Eastman's Deep Woods of Civilization, it's um, what I thought it was about. It was really about him kind of trying to bring the Native Americans to assimilation and like to survive. He believed that they needed to assimilate to survive. And in doing so, but to become fully equal, they needed to not believe, like not give in to what the white men says about them. Not it doesn't need to believe about their idea of them as being a savage Indian, a savage. But the idea of a noble savage comes from the Native Americans who are much alike. The Native Americans and the white being alike. Um, Eastman challenges the Native American discrimination by showing that they are alike. This is how he does it in Deep Woods Civilization. And he also argues that maturing from boy to man is much like evolution of cultures and the evolution of cultures throughout time. Like um, from childhood, this is a quote from him. From childhood, I was consciously trained to become a man. This kind of shows that kind of like evolution to become a man and equal to the Indians becoming more like the Americans through assimilation in their evolution. This is another article, Indian Boyhood and Discourse of Allotment. So Eastman believed that allotment was necessary. It was a stepping stone for the Native Americans to become more civilized. And he believed that this is what they needed to be a lot in allotments for assimilation. Um, when looking at Indian Boyhood, um, the article really puts it in perspective of a biography. It kind of hits the point that in looking at it as a biography, um, Eastman can kind of portray the Native American boyhood, the life of a young Native American boy, and how it's much like a white man. How it's not they're not so different. But even though they have different habits, I mean different like cultural aspects, their mode like their lives aren't so different. Um, Eastman became kind of a prime example of the ability that Native Americans have to assimilate. He was he lived in a Indian culture up until the age of 15. And at the age of 15, he then decided to do he would wanted to live in the white culture, the dominant white culture. And so he went to school. He got degrees. He went to schools like Dartmouth and Boston College, Boston University, where he met a lot of different influential people, and through his education himself, he became um kind of like a spokesman for the Indians. He became a way for the Indians and the white people to relate. He had the ability to talk with white people and they would listen. Through his writings, he became a notable person and who was both a Native American and a white person after his assimilation. And through him alone, he could kind of have the power to kind of help whites and natives see that they weren't so different. And when he wrote this book, he kind of it was really similar to books in the time period by non-Native American writers. It was similar to Huckleberry Finn, which he, and you look at it as a biography, you kind of see it as his life through the stories and how it's much like evolving from a man to a boy, or from a boy to a man, sorry, and how it's Indianness alone, like the boyhood, being a boy is much like being a free young kid before moving to being an adult. And it kind of puts the book in a different perspective of how maturing from being a boy to being a man is like the Indian culture maturing into a more civilized culture. So I believe this is what he kind of meant the book, or meant this to mean for both the whites and the Native Americans. In his books, I feel like he speaks to both the Native Americans and the whites. Um, he needs he's speaking to the Native Americans in that they need to assimilate so that they can evolve into a new white culture. And the white men and the natives, he believes that they're not so much unalike and that they have the same motives, same values in life. And the idea of Indianness to adolescence is like being free and living as an Indian, similar to like Boy Scouts, how men Boy Scouts can be like they're living free. So these articles kind of help me put a different perspective on Eastman's works and kind of see it how it's he's speaking to both of the whites and the Native Americans, and that the Native Americans are similar to the whites. And here are my sources. Thank you.